I had you shut up. I had that stuff for you. I couldn't
Yo, what it is, world? It's your boy Sugar Hill Sky. We are in the building. We are uptown Washington Heights. It's my hometown, man. It's my home team. You know what I'm saying? I actually feel honored to be here and talk to the big bro, Tony Christ.
Peace, blessings.
Tone Bone like we know him. Young mentor, TP in the building. You know what I'm saying? The big bro, Tone Christ. What he got here, something real special for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Get a good look at that right there. Something real special for y'all. We're going to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Introduce yourself, big bro. Let them know the demographics, where you from and all that, you know.
Tony Christ, here from Sugar Hill, raised in Sugar Hill Zone.
Okay, that's it. Real quiet, real quiet. You know, my job is to pick his brain. He gonna talk today. He gonna talk today. You know what I'm saying? So, yo, like I said, I'm honored to be here today. The big bro, Tony Christ, be here talking about his book, Random Thoughts of a Soulless Child. You like to get right into it, man. So, with that said, what made you write the book? What inspired you to actually get into writing this book?
I always get that question. The real thing that motivated me to write this book is overall the oppression of our people, but mainly me being in Coxsackie and these places right here, Coxsackie and Green, where they mostly send juveniles to, and seeing all these brothers incarcerated, young brothers incarcerated, it mirrored me, it reflected in me a mirror perception, meaning, what I mean by mirror perception means that these young brothers' reality is a reflection of my reality.
Okay.
So in telling my story, I would be telling other brothers' story who doesn't possess the oral skills or the intelligence or the education to disseminate their story themselves. So, and me telling my story, I'm telling these brothers' stories.
Nice. What actually gave you the inspiration? Cause I know you said Coxsackie, Green. What actually was the point where you sat down or you thought about? Because you know they say the thought always comes before the action. So what thought actually came about that you said, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write this? Was it something like you just writing letters and you put them together? Like, how do you really come up with it?
Actually, I always wanted to tell my story. When I was educated, when I was in Clinton, Attica, and these spots right here, teaching classes and stuff like that. Okay. And, you know, I always quote this saying, what King Solomon supposedly had said, it was the brother Menamo actually said it. The more knowledge, the more grief. The more wisdom, the more sorrow. Meaning that the more your knowledge expands, the more you start seeing things clearly. You know, understanding things on a more in-depth perspective, not a myopic or narrow perspective, which a lot of us see it. You know, so with that being said, it motivated right there alone. Motivated me to, I gotta tell my story, man. I gotta tell the world what's really going on from a different perspective, from a person who really grew up in the system.
Definitely.
You know, I grew up in the system when I was 15 years old, attempted murder, stuff like that. So I never knew, what it means to be in love, what it means to be with family, or grow up around family and stuff like that. All I knew was violence and destructive things that most of us are trapped in. You know, so it's like telling my story like that. It's like telling other brothers' stories, like I said. You know, and it came and studying Malcolm and Garvey and Huey and all these brothers like that. Man, they really kind of motivated me to tell that story because what I was reading, what these brothers talking about in their book and in their literature, I was experiencing in the penitentiary.
That's a good segue. But that was my next question. Basically, was like, what books have you read that really impacted you?
Well, the first book I read, it was a complex reading. The Prince Niccolo Machiavelli. Okay. Chancellor William, Destruction of Black Civilization.
Those are good reads. Definitely pick those up, man. Y'all get a chance.
Definitely. Soledad Brother. Okay. George Jackson. That was a collection of essays, prison letters he wrote that heavily influenced my thinking and attitude towards this system. There's a few other books. Anthony Browder Fowles. I go on and on. Behold the Pale Horse.
Definitely. I got that in the stash. You gotta read. That's the kind of joint you gotta read with a book cover. You don't know who watching you when you're reading that. You know what I'm saying? Go back a little bit. Let's talk about before your incarceration, the mindset you had and the path you was on that actually led you to prison. Because I know that's a lot of what's in the book. You know, so talk about that. You know, like your upbringing and coming up in these Sugar Hill streets and things of that nature.
Well, we grew up kind of poor, man. You know, a lot of people, a lot of young people today don't understand what it means to be poor, man. You know, we grew up eating peanut butter sandwiches, mayonnaise sandwiches, sugar water, stuff like that, going to bed hungry sometimes, you know. So I know what poverty is.
Right.
Me understand what poverty is and growing up in the system, I understand that poverty is actually created. You know, it's an agenda for why they want people poor. You know, so I grew up, lights condensed and cut off, the lights cut off, stuff like that. Unable to eat dinner, sometimes going to bed hungry and stuff, you know. So being fatherless,
Right.
you know. So for a lot of us black males growing up in the urban cities, man, a lot of us grew up without our fathers, man. And that's a hurting feeling. I grew up angry.
Right.
I was really angry, man, at everything.
So you think that anger pushed you to the streets and do the things that you did?
Yeah, when you trapped in a state of anger, what it does is it destroys communication, you know. All you want to do is just fight. All I want to do is fight. I was so self-destructive. Fighting was a way to release it. Now it's my exercise and my working out now. I release it. But fighting and stuff like that and all that and being self-destructive,
Right.
It was a way to release everything, you know.
I know now, just to fast forward some, I know now you and the brother TP, y'all have the, what is it? I don't want to call it the wrong name. The
Sugar Hill Station.
Sugar Hill Stations. Sugar Hill Station, where you come out and y'all give y'all time to the community and to the young brothers. I know you do the boxing thing with them. TP, you got a couple of mentors that come out and do the basketball thing and all that. So what was that transition like? Like just, you know, being a destructive kid, going through prison, coming home and now giving back to the kids. You see the kids and you see you and these kids basically.
Yeah, right.
So now what is it like to actually, you know, mentor a kid or tell them like this is the wrong path you're leading on and show them the 1-2 stance and all that? What is that
Oh,
really?
man, it feel good, man. I feel like this is the path I'm supposed to be on. You know, it's still a little painful,
Right.
you know, because I'm compassionate in what I do. Sometimes, you know, I cry, still cry. People don't get it. It's frustrating. You know, it's not tears of weakness, it's tears of frustration sometimes, you know. And I'm hearing these brothers' stories and stuff like that, and I go to these schools and speak sometimes, and hearing these young brothers' stories, man, it's really painful, you know. You really have to be psychologically, emotionally stalwart. I mean, strong, and me dealing with these brothers out here because they hurting, man. You know.
Let me add on for a second. When you say
Absolutely.
painful, could you explain that a little bit more in depth? Like, what hurts so much? What is it that brings the pain to the surface?
Good question. One of the things that brings the pain to surface is the inactivity or the engagement of our elders. You know, a lot of the youth run around here and they mimic the behavior of the elders, of the adults, and people they see media, mass media, and all stuff like that. So they're just emulating the behavior. And when I'm engaging and I see it, the lack of engagement by elders, man, that hurts me right there.
Right.
You know, being so compassionate in what I do hurts me right there. You know.
Man.
Yes.
Random Thoughts of a Soulless Child. You already know, baby. In the writing of the book, right? What did you want to make sure you got in the book? Because, you know, I don't know your age, but you're older than me, you know. And I've been around the block twice, you know what I'm saying? But what in the book did you definitely want to get in the book? Like, these are, when you writing, when you telling your story, you're like, I need these pivotal moments to be in there for these young people to understand.
Right, and the answer to that, or the retortion to that is to understand that what we're going through, black people in this society, is intended, it's deliberately and intentional by the system. It's called systematic. You know, it's systematic what we're going through, and this is the thing I keep emphasizing. We have to understand what has done to our people, man. When I go through these discussions, I hear a lot of people always blaming the oppression on the oppressed, you know, and not looking at or pointing the finger at the people who's doing the oppression. You know, and that's the main thing I want to emphasize. Once we understand what black people and what our people, mainly our the young brothers, because we under attack. You know, once we understand the war that's being placed upon us, we can kind of devise solutions on how to kind of
You can't fight
get
what you
around
don't
it.
know. Once you know
Right.
the enemy, then you know how to fight.
Right. This is why when we was at that panel discussion with the good brother right here, my comrade Terry Powers, we had a discussion, and brother in the audience blurted out, yeah, bro, talking is good, but we need some solutions.
Right.
You see? And I said it to say that praxis is in dialogue or tantamount to each other. When I mean praxis, I mean practical application. So dialogue is necessary.
Right.
And like you said, we can't go to war and send our young brothers off to war without understanding what it is we fighting or who it is we fighting, you know?
Definitely.
So this is the main point I want to emphasize in my book, man. Once we understand that we under attack, man. You know, we have to start getting serious, man. Our young brothers, man, it's another thing that inspired me to write this book, man. Just understanding the war that we're up against, man.
Let me ask you this question. You say we under attack. I wanna step away from a second. Let you know I read the book already. As I read the book, it's something that I stumbled upon that I noticed you don't really get in depth about a lot of the violence that is taking place in your life. But you mentioned that I did 15 years. I listened to a radio interview. You mentioned you did 15 years. As we listen to hip hop today, one of the flaws about the music that people say is a lot of these stories are not real. And so you hear a lot of kids talking about shooting and selling drugs and stuff like that. For somebody who has done 15 years in a prison, I never hear you glorify those things. And so I want to know from your perspective, how does it feel to see people, one, talk about this type of lifestyle, knowing that they didn't live it, and two, how do you feel coming from a situation where you did experience this, but you never share it? So how do you deal with holding all of this energy and emotion inside?
Well, I deal with one with my exercising, but for the rap thing, I see it in regards to what is called behaviorism. You know, in behaviorism, you're dealing with negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, and punishment. And dealing with that right there, you're also dealing with what is called psychological conditioning. And dealing with that right there, this is all connected. You're dealing with the Hegelian dialectic. The reason why our people cling more to destruction and negative behavior is because the behavior is rewarded. You see? And this is what I mean by negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, and punishment. You know, when you make a rap song, right? The rap song is about, oh, I'll kill you up, shoot you up, oh, I'll sell drugs, this and that right there. The people who control the music industry controls the prison industrial complex. The people who controls both of those controls the educational system. So, you see? So one person that controls this controls that reality. This is one of the reasons why they created COINTELPRO, for fear of a black messiah rising up amidst the oppressed masses. Now, the more destructive and negative the lyrics are, the more you're rewarded. You see? This is, for example, the NWA Public Enemy. Why the NWA come about? We seen people going to watch this movie NWA and stuff like that, not even knowing NWA was created as an antithesis to Public Enemy. See, the rap was more conscious then, during that time. So what can we do to not get these brothers in these inner cities who are oppressed for over 500 years, matter of fact, over 3,000 years, you want to really, you know, what can we do? See? You turn their oppression on each other. You turn their anger and frustration on each other. You know, that's what you call behaviorism. Get them to react in a certain way that their behavior is controlled by the system. And these philosophies and ideologies are implemented in today's society right now, man. We have to understand these things. This is what I keep emphasizing. We have to start understanding what's being done to our people, man.
So this is a plan. This
exactly, man. Systematic and deliberate, man.
How long did it actually take you to get into the book and write the book? What was the process like?
It didn't really take me 2 years. It took me maybe like a year. And that's because I was moving around and stuff like that. But the book actually came about one time I was telling the story, because it's kind of crazy how I wrote the book. I actually wrote it in the dark under some candles. I was in the dark one day, a lady, lights got cut off. I'm just spit it real quickly. Lights got cut off. Instead of me going back to where I was at, I just stayed in this environment because, you know, I'm used to being in the dark and used to being poor and stuff, no exaggeration. So this lady gave me the book. It's a diary. Poetic Greg gave me this diary to write one time, and I remember that, grabbed the diary, went and brought me some candles, and I started writing the book in the dark. And by the time the lights came back on, almost 2 weeks later, I had 167 books, pages written, handwritten in the book. You know, so it was a straight read, man. It was a straight read, straight writing, fluent. I didn't have to go think about things to say. Everything was in my head already, but it's a true story of what happened to me.
Inspirational right there, man. That's inspirational right there, man. That's big, man. What made you come up with the name? How did you come up with the name? Was that something you had and you put the story to it, or from the story came the name?
Yeah, good analysis. From the story came the name. Everything that I went through when I was young, man, was like I had no feeling for things. I was just soulless, no soul. You know, when you have a soul, it's like you feel more, you feel compassion towards things. I didn't feel no compassion toward anything. I was so self-destructive, you know. And I was telling the story when this brother pulled out a gun on me one time and cocked it in my head. I didn't even see death. I didn't even see me being murdered at that time. You know, all I saw at that time with him doing that was me, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take your head off after this is over. You know, I'm gonna see you again. That's exactly what happened.
I ask you another question, from an artist to another artist. A lot of times I notice, as an artist, when you create, a lot of times you put a lot of work, a lot of ethic, a lot of passion into what you're trying to create, what you're trying to accomplish. And usually after completion, the amount of success that's celebrated is so small. And so I want to ask you, going through all of the things that you went through to create this story, now that it's finished, it's published, and it's out here for the masses, how do you honestly feel that people are gravitating to the book? Are you getting the love that you feel that you deserve? Or do you feel like people are just showing a little bit of, oh, I see you did something, congratulations. Do people really embrace your story and your livelihood when they see you?
It's getting there. It's a slow process. It's getting there. You know, I'm most humble about my Sugar Hill family, man. They the ones that showing real love to me. You know, because a lot of these brothers around here actually saw what I went through and what I've been through. You know, I saw what they've been through and stuff like that. That's why I keep saying, emphasizing my story is not just an individual story.
Right.
You know, it's a story that's reminiscent of all of us.
And writing a book, research-wise, because there's really no research, but just like actually having to dig into who you are, because sometimes that's painful, having to what they call like take the scabs off the wounds and things of that nature.
Oh
So
man, the challenges was overwhelming. I mean, sometimes, man, I would fight against going to sleep. Sometimes I had to refrain from being in the company of others. You know, they say man is not supposed to cry. You know, and a lot of times I do that. I cry inside, not necessarily in tears, but I cry inside a lot.
right.
You know, it's a hurtful thing, man, to write about stuff right here because you have to constantly relive some things. You know, and I ain't gonna lie, man. Right now it hurts, man, even talking about it.
Right.
You know, growing up not knowing my father, my mom, seeing her struggling and stuff like that. My brother, little brother, my two sisters, stuff, seeing that they struggling and things like that. It's a hurtful feeling, man.
Right.
You know, when you really connected to people that you love, man, it's a hurtful thing to see them go through some things, let alone your own self. You know, I kind of like put a lot of things to the side of what I was going through because I felt I was so overwhelmed in seeing and embracing the pain that my family was going through, and close friends was going through. So a lot of times I didn't really put my pain to the forefront, hence the term soulless child.
So are you the you talking about your siblings? Are you the oldest? Where you fall at?
Yes, I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. So
Yeah.
you took a lot of that.
Yes, and growing up in an
What
environment
mama
like Sugar Hill,
loved.
right, being
Right.
in a wild
Okay.
environment, I felt that I needed to be the protective family and stuff like that, you know.
Okay.
So I consumed internalized a lot of their pain and frustration, you know. And it's a hurtful feeling, man, to have all that stuff bottled up in me.
Right.
Now I understand how the brother Malcolm was feeling, how King was feeling. I was gonna write a poem one time about that. You know, and the question was, I wanted that Malcolm X feel the way I felt, or King felt the way I felt.
You need to go ahead and do that though.
Yeah.
Well, it's never too late. You got the thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I definitely push for that. You know what I'm saying?
As you mentioned Malcolm and you mentioned King, earlier you mentioned Garvey. I've listened to you for a long time and I consider myself to be a very educated scholar. It's just my opinion that when I listen to you and I spend time around you, I get the feeling or I get the vibe of being around a Dr. King or Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey. Do you ever feel that the same way that their story ended, that your story can end that way? Or is that not a thought that crosses your mind?
That brother gotta excuse me.
Yeah, that's all love.